Welcome to The Milk, the podcast that pours it all out, the messy, the magical, and the mildly unhinged moments of motherhood and womanhood. Real talk, honest stories, and reminders that none of us really know exactly what we're doing, and that's kind of the best part. I'm Taylor, your host and soon-to-be mom of 3, so let's laugh, learn, and milk this season of life for all that it's worth. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of The Milk. I'm so excited to be here. I thought, what better way than to spill the milk, starting with my third pregnancy. I actually still get jump scared every time I say those words out loud. A lot of you have been holding me accountable, which I appreciate. But if you have heard me in the past say that I was absolutely done having kids, you are indeed correct, and I retract that statement. Lesson learned, never say never. So while I'm recording this episode, I am now 14-ish weeks pregnant. This episode is so long overdue, and I just really appreciate your patience and understanding. I've really just been trying to soak up the last couple of months being pregnant and coming back to life. The first trimester was so rough. I feel like every time it has been, but then when you add in 2 crazy toddlers, it has definitely been a challenge, but I am coming back. So I thought maybe we should start with life before getting pregnant. So after having Aspen and Bash back to back, I got pregnant with Bash when Aspen was 8 months old. And so when Bash was born, they were 16 months apart. And after both of my births, I struggled with postpartum depression pretty severely, where it definitely knocked me down for a lot of the time. I feel like so many moms can relate where you don't recognize yourself in the mirror, and you're having the best months of your life, but also some of the darkest. So I swore that after having Bash and having to muscle through those dark times with Scotty, that we were absolutely done having kids. And when I finally started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I thought, you know what, I would rather prioritize my own mental well-being and make sure that I was okay to take care of my other kids than to overextend myself by having more kids. I had 2 healthy babies at home. What more could I be asking for and just grateful for? So even though I said I was done having kids, even when I was pregnant with Bash, I think there was a small part of me that I just stuffed deep down inside of me, where I always thought maybe there was room for one more. And I didn't really feel like I was done. Like, I tried to soak up all of those special moments, growing Bash in my tummy, like thinking about the final kicks and the final bump picks and just all of the last. And I think I was really just trying to trick myself into believing that it was the last time, because a part of me really wanted it to be. But then there was just this little void, or this little voice in my head that was telling me otherwise. So after Bash was born, we were in the thick of 2 under a year and a half. And Scotty and I definitely had our work cut out for us. I remember us waking up on the first morning, and we were both just in such shock at having 2 babies, 2 bottles, 2 stinky diapers. And I think when Bash was around 6 months old, Scotty and I were like 1000% we're not having any more kids. And to the point where he scheduled his vasectomy. I wish he was here to tell this story, because we kind of both have slightly different versions of the story, but he also gave me notes of things that I had to include. But yeah, so anyways, he scheduled his vasectomy, and he got in his Uber to go. When I told him the story back, he was like, it was not the doctor's office, it was the hospital. So he showed up at the hospital, jockstrap in hand and all. I'm sure he had his tail between his legs. And when he got to the front desk to check in for his appointment, the front desk was confused because they had his name on the scheduling, but somehow it didn't transfer over to the procedure calendar. There was some sort of system error. So they canceled his vasectomy. And the next day they said they could take him, but he was going on a work trip, and then we were going into the holidays. So we kind of forgot about it, or just deprioritized it on our list. And on his way home from the hospital, and me separately, we had the same thought without thinking about it. We were like, is this a sign from God? Like, how weird is that you go to the hospital for your appointment, and for some reason that day there's a scheduling error. So we both thought about it, and then we're like, heck no, that is not a sign from God. Like, that is just really bad luck. It's going to happen. So that's something to point out, that he almost got a vasectomy. And then when Bash was around, I want to say 18 months, I feel like the cloud started lifting, and Aspen was probably around 3 and Bash was 18 months. I started getting like this little itch of, oh my gosh, life is starting to feel a little easier, a little better. Why not just flip our world all the way upside down and start over again? And Scotty was like, heck no, we are not doing that. We are finally enjoying life. We're finally at a point where we're feeling like we are not drowning every single day, which I did note. And it was such a big difference. You know, our relationship started getting better. We started enjoying life more with our children and doing fun things. And I would wake up feeling happy and excited instead of not being able to get out of bed for days at a time. I also wanted to note that I've talked about it in previous podcast episodes, but since we're starting fresh here, a big part of that recovery was going on an SSRI. I'm on a very low dose of Lexapro, so that was something that really helped me get through those times as well. So I want to get back to that feeling or that itch where I think a lot of moms can relate, especially when you're thinking and debating of adding another child. I think this is something, at least from talking with my friends, that gets brought up a lot when thinking of going from 2 to 3 kids. A lot of people are like, should we be done with 2 or do we add a 3? I also see tons of videos on TikTok of like moms weigh in, do we stop at 2 or do we add 3? But my question that I was always thinking about was, how do you know when you're done? Is it a feeling? Is it a financial decision? Is it a survival mechanism, which was kind of where we were at? We were like, we actually cannot add another kid to our plate. And I don't know, it was just something that I would spiral about and think about constantly of, how do you know when you're done? Are we done? Are we making the right decision? Are we not? And one thing that someone told me was that you will never regret having a baby. When you look at that third baby or whatever number baby that is, you will never regret having it and be like, oh, darn, I wish we never had you. But you might look back one day at the table when your kids are older and be like, darn, I wish I had one more. So that was kind of the selling point for me. I got pregnant not because I wanted another baby, but because I wanted another family member and like an investment in our future family. Whenever I come from a family of 3 kids, and it was always so much fun. It was never boring. There was always something going on. There was always some part of drama, and it was just always interesting. And I loved our family dynamic and just the chaos of the holidays. And that was something that I really wanted for our family. Chaos stresses me out, but I feel like I also thrive in it. So yeah, I felt like there was another seat at our table in our future. And so that's kind of how it came about. I became open to it. And I think I put a lot of trust in God's plan for me and my family. I mean, that's how Aspen and Bash came around. So I was like, you know what? Why stray from that? If I am meant to have a third baby, then I will. And it will be made apparent and it'll fall into place when it's supposed to. And so with a lot of therapy work and just trust in my path, here we are. I got pregnant and found out August 13th, right after Bash turned 2, which is pretty crazy because I remember on Bash's birthday looking at Scotty and I was tearing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, isn't it so weird that we do not have a baby anymore? Like, we have no more babies. Little did I know, I had a little sesame seed baby inside my stomach that I would find out about a handful of days later. Okay, so let's dive into finding out that I was pregnant, because it was such a surprise, something that we were not anticipating at the time, but something that we were open to. And so I love our story of just kind of how it happened. So August was a crazy busy month. It was, I don't know if I've mentioned before, but my dad's birthday is the day before Bash's birthday. So August 8th is my dad's birthday, and he was turning 70, which was a big, big celebration. He doesn't really throw crazy birthdays, but we're like, you know what? We have to celebrate you. We want family to fly in. We want to throw a party for all of your closest friends and family. So my sisters and their husbands and boyfriends and everyone flew in, and we had like a crazy series of events through the weekend. So on Thursday, which I can't really do mental math, but I think that's like the 6th, we had a really fun golf day where all of the girls turned into caddies and surprised all of the boys with the last names on the back of the caddy outfits. And we went around and just celebrated my dad through doing one of his favorite things on Thursday and had a family dinner. I promise this will all make sense as to why it's important after. And so then Friday was my dad's, so then Friday was the 8th. So it was the 7th and the 8th. Friday was the 8th, and we had a massive party for my dad's birthday. I think there were about 60 people at my parents' house. My aunt and uncle flew in. It was just one of the most loved and moments that I'll cherish forever, just having all of our closest friends and family around celebrating my dad, because he's one of the most important people in our lives and like the foundation of our family. And it just felt so good to give something back to him like that he's given all of us. See, I'm getting like pregnancy hormonal emotional right now. So we drank a lot, we danced a lot, we had so much fun. And then the next day was Bash's birthday. So we kind of had a day off from doing a birthday party for him. And we're like, we'll celebrate him as a little family and we'll save his birthday for the next day. So on Bash's birthday, we took him to the OC Fair because that was still around. So we did that as a family. And then the next day was his birthday party on the 10th, which was a Sunday. And we had a cute farm day at Zoomar's. If anyone lives in Orange County, it's like the cutest place to go for a weekend activity with friends and family, or to host a birthday party. So we had that there. And at this point I was about to start my period, or it was like plus or minus. Mine's always between 28 to 30 days. So I was like, that's weird. I haven't gotten it yet. But every single month I would spiral and think I missed it. And Scotty would be like, take a test. And right after taking a test, I'd get my period. And he'd be like, okay, you're crazy. Stop spiraling. And so this month I didn't really think any differently. And I woke up on the day of Bash's birthday on the 10th, and I felt a little nauseous, but I also had so many drinks over the past few days. And then at his birthday party, after his birthday party, we came home and I just stunk like farm animals. So I took a shower, and when I got out of the shower, I felt my chin and I had these weird bumps. Like they weren't pimples, but it was like almost like a heat rash. And I was like, that's weird. Maybe I had an allergic reaction to the dust at the farm. And then all of a sudden I felt the inside of my lips, and it was almost like I had those little canker sore blisters, or the ones that you get from having too much acidic food. So I was like, okay, it makes sense. I had like 17 margaritas over the past few days, like chalking it up to that. We always make excuses, right? And so just weird things started happening like that. And I was telling Scotty, he's like, that's odd, but just take a test and be done with it. And that was Sunday. Then Monday, the next day, I was recording a podcast episode in LA. I was so busy, didn't have time to take a test, still didn't have my period, but it would have been like one day late at this point. And then Tuesday, the next day on the 13th, I woke up and I felt my boobs, and they felt significantly bigger. And that's when I knew, oh my gosh, I actually think I'm pregnant. And so I grabbed a test and I went to the bathroom and I took the test. I told Scotty I was going pee, which I thought he knew was code word for I'm going to take a test. And I guess he had no idea. And so I went into the bathroom, and as I was about to read the test, Aspen walked in looking for something. And I was like so anxious that I needed emotional support. So I'm like, please sit on my lap, just sit with me. She had no idea what was going on. And I don't even know why I put up the camera. I feel like I've done that each time, and it is so unintentional. It's almost to be like, you're crazy. You're going to look back at this and laugh that you thought you were pregnant. And so I'm sitting there, and she's sitting on my lap being like, Mom, what are you doing? And I turn it over and my mouth just drops. Like I could not lift my mouth off the floor. I was floored. I was in such shock. I could not believe my eyes. And Aspen was just like, Mommy, what's wrong? I was like, Mama has a baby in her belly. And I felt like it felt like an out of body experience again. You'd think by the third time you would get less shocked. I was still so shocked, and I could not wait to tell Scotty. I couldn't think of a cute way to tell him. I was like, verbal diarrhea. I just had to go and tell this man that we were having a third baby. And so I walked out with the test, and I turned to Aspen. I said, Aspen, don't say anything to Dada. Do not tell Dada that I have a baby in my tummy. We go to the living room, and I kid you not, before we were even halfway into the room, before I can even get close enough to hand him a test, Aspen just yells, "Mama has a baby in her belly." And Scotty looks up from his phone like he saw a ghost. He was like, "What?" And I showed him the test, and I think his stomach fell out of his butt, because it was also a really stressful week for him with work. And so it just felt like he was probably so overwhelmed with all of this news. And again, it was something we were open to, but not that we were planning right in that minute. And so he literally did not believe me. He thought I had a fake test. And I was like, no, like, we're actually having a baby. So I think it took us the entire day for the shock to wear off, but we became so grateful and so excited. But like, that's kind of our story. We always just throw fuel in the fire. We always just add things on our plate and we figure it out. And it's always led us the right way. And I just love that for us. Okay, so keep in mind that this was also 2 weeks before a 2-week family trip to Europe to further celebrate my dad's 70th birthday. It was a dream of his to go as a big family with all the grandkids to Europe together. And so I think the biggest shock was, oh my gosh, I'm going to be traveling to Europe with 2 crazy toddlers at 6 weeks pregnant, when my morning sickness typically kicks in full force. So I was petrified, to say the least. Like, how am I going to pull this off? And to save these stories for the next episode, because they will come, but to give you a little glimpse, it was quite the journey. But I'm here to tell the tales that I did survive. And it's just crazy what you can accomplish while being so sick, newly pregnant, on the other side of the world for 2 weeks with kids. So before we left for our trip, Scotty and I were like, we have to tell my parents and just give them a heads up before the trip, because no one knew yet. And we didn't want to ruin the trip. And I was like, darn, I'm not going to be able to drink and celebrate my dad, which is not a big deal, but I didn't want to be the party pooper of the trip. And so we invited my parents over to the house and just said, we need help packing, which my mom thought was so strange, being like, you guys are grown adults. Why do you need help packing for Europe for you and your little kids? So we invited them over, and I pulled out a bottle of my mom's favorite champagne, and to kind of break any tension or just like loosen them up a little bit. And I made this cute little sign with the kids where I put Aspen's handprint in pink and Bash's in blue. And it read, "Don't kill our mommy and daddy, but we're getting another sibling. Love, Aspen and Bash." And I taped the pregnancy test across it. And when my parents came over, I was like, oh, Aspen made you a piece of art. Do you want to see it? And I was like, hey, close your eyes, Aspen, go give it to them. And I got it on camera. I'll post it probably around this time that this episode comes out. So she hands it to my parents, and immediately my mom takes one glimpse and looks at me, deer in the headlights, like, oh my gosh, she knew exactly what it was. My dad read it, haha, don't kill him. And my dad has a South African accent, so it sounds even funnier if you see the video. He was reading it like, haha, don't kill my mommy and daddy. Oh, clear blue. Like, he was reading the pregnancy test and looks up at me and is kind of laughing and like, did he understand what he was reading? And he looks back down and reads, we're getting a sibling. And he looks up just like, what? You're pregnant? It took him so long for it to register. They were both in such shock. I feel like they did not think another kid was on our radar. Whereas Scotty's family, we invited them over the night before we left for our trip, and they sniffed us out from a mile away. I think they've been wanting another grandkid so badly, and his sister wanting a niece or nephew as well, that they were just like, are they going to tell us they're pregnant before the trip? This makes so much sense. I threw them off for a little bit. I will give myself a little pat on the back for that. And then at dinner, Scotty made the announcement and pulled out the test. And we told them too, and they were super happy and supportive, of course. So after telling our families, it just felt like such a big relief, where we continued having the love and support that we needed for a third child, because we were still shocked at this point, and we were off to Europe. So I think I covered most of the story of getting pregnant, how we made the decision to have a third, because that was one of the most asked questions I've had in my inbox. I posted a Q&A a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to gather the most asked questions and just rattle through them and give some answers. So the first one, someone said, I thought you were done with 2. What changed? I feel like I got 50 of these messages. It was the most asked question. I've kind of touched on that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we definitely chose the harder route. It would have been so nice to be done with 2 and have a simpler life. And, traveling's easier. You can just get 1 car if you're going places, 2 hotel rooms, 4 airplane seats rather than 5. It would have been a simpler life. But at the same time, the pros outweighed the cons for me, where I'm like, you know what? I would rather look back and be like, wow, I loved having this crazy big life, a family that never was bored and always kept things interesting. Not saying that families of 4 are bored, but I'm sure I will envy them having a much easier life than a life with 3 kids. I think one of my biggest fears with going past 2 kids was the reason why I wanted to potentially stop at 2 is because my goal is to be the most present parent that I possibly can. And just the thought of having to split even in 2 ways when it comes to sporting events or school things or anything that was important to my kids, like how, when there's 2, parents can flip-flop and switch. But when there's 3, you physically cannot be in 3 places at once with 2 parents. And that was something I experienced when I was a kid. And as the oldest, I feel like sometimes I was the one that went off on my own a little bit more than the other 2 because I was the oldest. So, I totally get that, but I did kind of feel the flip side of that a little bit. And so I so wanted to be done at 2 and be like, you know what, we will always have someone at everything that my kids need. But in reality, that's life too. You can't always be there. I'm sure there'd be times where we'd be tied up at work and whatnot. So I definitely did have arguments for stopping at 2, but then also going for a 3rd. I think what came down to it is just wanting to fill the void of that. I felt like there was one more out there. It was a little voice in my head that I felt like I could not get rid of. And now being pregnant, it finally makes sense where I don't have that voice anymore and everything just feels so right. Second most asked question was, were you trying or was it a surprise? So I kind of mentioned, but we were open to it. It was something that I very much wanted. But at the same time, we wanted to wait a little longer. But with that said, I really wanted a 3-year age gap between Bash and baby number 3 if we were going. And we got to 2 years and 9 months. So it was pretty much right there. A few months early doesn't hurt anyone. But yeah, so again, 3 surprise pregnancies. People are like, how does that even happen? How are you shocked? It's a thing. It really is, without getting into too much TMI. Someone said, I don't feel done at 2, but my husband does. That's a tough one. Scotty and I were definitely at that state at one point. I feel like he was like, we are so done. And I was like, but maybe there's another one. I remember I'd have a couple glasses of wine and then make sure that I would give him 3 glasses of wine and be like, well, what do you think about a 3rd? So get him in the best state. And we'd kind of giggle at the idea of it. And then when we'd be sober, he'd be like, absolutely not. So I'd warm him up that way. But at the end of the day, I do feel like it's something that both parents really do need to be on a team about because it is such a big commitment going from 2 to 3. And if not, then more of the work and responsibility would probably fall on you. And it just depends if you're okay with that or not. But yeah, I also go by the rule, there's no perfect age gap. If you wanted to wait and see how long and give yourself more time to come to an answer yourself, that was kind of where we were at. I was like, I'm not going to rush this decision, even if it's a 4-year age gap. And it's just funny how life chooses otherwise for you. But I was totally fine waiting more time instead of saying an absolute no or an absolute yes to kind of come to that conclusion on our own. Someone asked about the age gaps between our kids. So between Aspen and Bash, it's 16 months, 16 and a half. And then between Bash and baby number 3, it will be 2 years, 9 months. So that's 33 months, which is more than double what Aspen and Bash are. So I have high hopes for that. Also, Aspen and Bash will be in school full-time for the first half of the days from 9 to 12:30. So I feel like that will really help set us up for success, where Aspen was home for the first year of Bash's life. So I pretty much had 2 babies at home. And then Aspen and baby number 3 will literally be 4 years apart. Aspen will turn 4 a few weeks before baby number 3 is here. Do we know the gender or are we finding out? So this is the $1 million question. We do not know the gender. The gender has been in our portal for over a month. Initially, we decided that we were just going to wait till birth because we have one of each. We have a boy and a girl. So we're like, we don't care what we have. We just really want a healthy baby. And we've loved the idea of waiting till birth. But since the last 2 pregnancies were such surprises, I was like, I need to find out. I can't have any more surprises in my life. So I'm such a planner. I'm so type A. And then this time I was kind of like, it's baby number 3. I really don't care. We can buy things last minute. We can get a few neutral things. And then once the baby's here, we can Amazon some stuff. So initially we were going to wait, but I'd actually, if anyone's listening and has any insight on this, I would love for you to reach out, because it's like an internal battle. I don't know what to do, because I was talking with a girlfriend and she was saying that she waited with her first child and found out with the second. The first one, she was so sick during her birth, unfortunately, that she said she was fighting for her life. And when her daughter came out and she found out it was a girl, she did not care because she was so sick and going like in and out of consciousness. So that made me think like, oh gosh, imagine waiting 9.5 months and only to like not care what you're having when it matters the most. And I've also not had the greatest birth. I'm kind of like 1 or 0 for 2. So like maybe we will find out before. I don't know. I don't see myself just having one of those like very calm, cool, and collected births where the baby gets put on the chest and everyone's crying and they're like, it's a girl, it's a boy. With Bash, he was rushed straight to the NICU. I didn't even get to see his face or meet him for 12 hours. So I wouldn't have even known. And I was so sick after my C-section. And then with Aspen, her umbilical cord snapped as I was pulling her out. So they rushed her straight over. The NICU team came in. They were working on her. I was panicking. They were trying to pull my placenta out. And so looking back, I'm like, okay, there was definitely some fear and shock in both of those situations that, thank God, I knew the gender. So this time I'm like, I'm still on the fence about it. So if anyone has good stories either way of waiting or finding out before, let me know, because I'm kind of leaning now towards finding out before. But I'm also not in a rush. Like this could be in a month or 2, or it could be even the day before giving birth if it's scheduled, and just be like, oh, let's find out what we're having tomorrow. I feel like that could be fun too. But would love your insight on what you think I should do, because I'm so indecisive. Someone said, what are you most looking forward to? Oh my gosh, so many things. I think this pregnancy has been so different, not just on the body and whatnot, but it almost feels like my first pregnancy again. I don't know if it's because it's been so long since I've been pregnant, because Aspen and Bash were back to back, where it never felt like I wasn't pregnant. It didn't feel new or anything. And so with Bash's, it was like, oh yeah, I heard Aspen's heartbeat like 8 to 10 months ago. Like it's not something new. It didn't feel as special, even though it still was. Where this time during the first ultrasound where we heard the baby's heartbeat, I started crying again. I've cried in like every ultrasound. I felt the baby kick for the first time at 13 weeks or maybe 12 weeks. And I was just so shocked. It's all so exciting again, where I think people are like, oh, by the 3rd, do you even care? Someone asked me that. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what it is, but it really feels extra special this time. And I don't know if it's because maybe this really is my last pregnancy or what, but I'm most looking forward to, I don't know if even know if that answers the question, but that's what I've been most looking forward to, is just how new and kind of like first time around this feels. And then also just watching Aspen and Bash become siblings at an older age. Aspen's fully aware that I'm having a baby. She talks to it. She tells me all about how she's going to take care of the baby. She's so mature that if like she was feeding Bash bottles when she was 17 months, that thinking of her at 4 years helping to take care of a sibling and just loving on it just literally brings tears to my eyes. And then seeing Bash as a middle child kind of makes me giggle. But I do think he's going to step into being the best older brother too, even though right now he's the baby and definitely acts like the baby. I'm just so excited to see 3 kids together and also just see what the baby looks like. I feel like Aspen and Bash look so much alike. And so I'm just so intrigued if it's going to be like another copy and paste or just someone so different. And lastly, what will I do different this time around? This is a great question. It actually made me think about it. I'm like, dang, I think each pregnancy or even after every birth, I've definitely let loose a little more. Like I used to be so type A and do everything so by the book. And then I think when it comes to the 3rd, you just don't really have the capacity for that. Like I am taking kids to school every morning at 9 a.m. I'm picking them up at 12:30. Nap schedules will definitely still be a priority, but I think they'll be much more flexible. We used to take naps with the kids in their cribs every single time on the minute. And I feel like a lot of the time this time, like it's going to have to be on the go. And the third baby just kind of goes with the flow and kind of you adapt and make your own schedule that way. So that's something I'm definitely trying to lean into, is just like doing things differently, and that's okay. So, and just, yeah, not having too much pressure on myself. And when it comes to breastfeeding or formula, I've had struggles with my past 2 pregnancies. So making sure that if something's not working, to not hang on to it and not put too much pressure on myself, and just to give it up and make sure that I myself also am the best version of myself and taking care of myself, because now I have 3 other little babies to take care of and pour into. So definitely will be staying on my Lexapro. I only unfortunately started, I want to say, after like 6 or 8 months of having BASH. So that's something I can talk about before, because I'm still on it while pregnant at a very low dose. My doctor's totally okay with it. We've weighed out the pros and cons, and I feel like that's something I'm definitely going to have to continue in my 3rd postpartum journey, which I'm already mentally preparing for, because that's been a little bit of a battle with the last 2. So it's something that gives me a little bit of anxiety, but I do have high hopes and I do have a great support system. So I think that's all I have for you guys. I can't believe that was our first episode. I hope I didn't ramble too much. That was so much fun. I appreciate all the love and support. I'm so excited for this new chapter of mine, and just for me to be able to share my life, but also the voices of other women, and having experts on here to really just make our lives easier, more fun, and less overwhelming, so we can really just enjoy life with our babies and as moms, and just how we evolve as women. So thanks for listening in to the first episode of The Milk. If you're not yet subscribed, just hit, there's like a little plus sign, either if you're on Spotify or on Apple, where you can just subscribe, and it just notifies you every time there's a new episode, so you never miss one. Thank you guys.